In a previous discussion, I mentioned that females are known to secrete different pheromones based on their menstrual cycle. What is pheromones? Pheromones are chemical releases, and it causes a response in members of the same species. When pheromones are released, it might be a scent that goes below the threshold of our conscious smell, but it is released anyhow. And when women, for example, release pheromones to attract a male, this attraction is something that happens even though neither the male nor the female knows that pheromones have been released, because it is not something that is smelled above the threshold of what we can smell given our normal olfactory senses, but it is smelt and it is at a subliminal level, and it will cause attraction to the female. When a female is ovulating, she sends out pheromones to attract a viable mate to serve the purpose of procreation. This raises a question as to when do men send out pheromones, or do men send pheromones out all the time? The reason why this question is raised and might have been raised is because males have the ability to produce sperms at all times and almost at any time. Now, does this mean that men are constantly sending out pheromones to attract a female because he has sperms that he can plant to produce an offspring? Does this mean that he plays a superior role in evolution, as evolutionists would contend? Now, if men are constantly sending out pheromones to attract females, this might have an impact, or definitely have implications for any intimate relationship that this man might be in. Very often in intimate relationships, there is either a stated or an unstated expectation of monogamy. And if there are extra pair relationships, these relationships places strain on the primary relationships and has implications for things such as territoriality and fidelity. These implications are serious and could have serious repercussions for a primary relationship. If a man is constantly viable and could engage in intercourse at any time and at all times, then what this means is that the females should be able to be involved in sexual intercourse at any time and at all times. If this is not so, in an intimate relationship, it might be perceived as incompatibility, because the man is always producing sperms, he's probably always ready and more often ready to have intercourse than the woman has an interest in intercourse, and it is perceived as being incompatible. Now, what happens here? Does it mean that the man becomes free to engage in sex with other women if the woman in the primary relationship does not have the same drive and motivation to engage in sexual intercourse at all times, at any time, or whenever this man is ready to have sex? There is another dynamics in sexual relationships. Women could engage in sexual intercourse immediately following orgasm. On the other hand, males need a rest period before re-engaging in sexual intercourse. I will discuss how to address these differences in males and females with regards to stages of sexual intercourse vis-a-vis arousal, plateau, orgasm, and re-engagement. However, for the discussion on hand, I will continue to present the tenets of evolution with respect to the differences in virility in males when compared with females. For this discussion, I will discuss one of the tenets of evolution known as orthogenesis. According to the tenets of orthogenesis, species will evolve to a higher state of complexity. In other words, for this high state of complexity to be achieved, superior species and superior species members, must be selective about the people with whom they mate and create offspring. So this is a fundamental tenet of evolution. The aim of evolution is so that each species will evolve to the highest level of complexity, and there are inferior and superior species members, and therefore superior species members must be selective in who they mate. They should not be mating with inferior species members, so to ensure that the best seeds are procreated. Now, based on this perspective, Darwin contended that European and persons of European descent are superior, and he went on to classify other races as barbarians and indigenous people, and inside of that would be poor people as well as people in the lower echelons of society, even among European stock. Furthermore, Darwin also contended that men are superior to women, and furthermore, males of European descent are more superior to males from these other races and other stocks. From this tenet, the concept of selective mating emerged. Now, according to the tenet of selective mating, superior people must only mate with superior people. Superiority and inferiority are more than just genetic endowments. Superiority and inferiority also translates into phenotypic traits, including wealth, education, and accomplishments. So phenotypic traits are traits and characteristics that are molded and determined and influenced by external environmental circumstances such as opportunity and availability and access. And these phenotypic traits are to be found in people with superior genes as well. So superior phenotypic trait such as being wealthy or being well educated or having any of those assets and endowments that people consider to be superior and to be aspired to. Darwin contended that these were also traits that could be found among superior people. Superior males, according to the tenets of evolution, are endowed with physical characteristics and traits that went beyond physical traits such as color or race. These traits included the phenotypic characteristics, some of which I just mentioned. Now, this way, superior species and superior species members will be engaging in proactive behavior if they only engaged in selective mating and this way they would cleanse the gene pool and they would eradicate inferior species and species members, and species members that had both inferior genes and inferior phenotypes. So people who were poor, people who were not well educated and did not have some of these possessions, they would eventually be eradicated from the human gene pool. And no doubt this led to things such as eugenics, racial cleansing, and some of the atrocities that we saw under Hitler's rule. And although in modern times we tend to think that these conditions of eugenics were somehow concentrated under Hitler and under those kinds of very, very obnoxious regime, the concept of eugenics was far more widespread, and it found its way in society, in other societies, in other forms, including things such as Planned Parenthood, the use of contraceptives, selective abortions, and in some cases selective abortions. Now, going back to the discussion with regards to superior species and superior species members, according to Darwin, having these traits and characteristics ensured survivability. And therefore, because males were superior to females and played a superior role in the evolutionary dynamics, men were endowed with the ability to be able to have their sperms be impregnated into women at any time and at will. And Darwin referred to this as one of the obvious evidence of males' superiority, and it was known as one of the privileges, or a male privilege that is associated with evolution and orthogenesis. So the ability to have sperms be present in the male all the time, and the ability to mate with as many women as possible is a male privilege that is the offshoot of evolution. It is what it is. It is against this background that several studies were conducted to ascertain that women had changes in their pheromones during their monthly menstrual cycle. These studies confirmed that when women are ovulating, they release pheromones to attract viable mates with whom they could copulate. Additional research also confirmed that women taste and men change when they are ovulating. Researchers contended that this too is an outcome of evolution, and women tend to be attracted to men who are more aggressive, and they are more likely to engage in an extra pair relationship when they are ovulating. Be that as it may, extra pair relationships, whether perpetrated by male or female, often are associated with other kinds of social, psychological, emotional, mental, and financial risk. Extra pair relationships have been associated with social defeats and other kinds of mental, emotional, and psychiatric and social challenges, including an increased risk for aggression, violence, spousal, and mate murders. Reverting to the question at hand concerning whether men could and should plant their semen at all times or at any time that they choose because they are virile and viable, remains to be answered. There are two approaches to answering this question. In the first instance, there is information concerning the length of time that it takes for sperms to reach maturity. Sperms take anywhere between 72 to 90 days to mature, and only mature sperms could impregnate. So even though a man is producing sperms and ejaculating regularly, those sperms take a long time to mature. And you also have issues of the sperm count in the semen, as well as the sperm traits such as how swiftly they swim up the birth channel, the woman's vagina up into the womb. And some sperms, of course, are more aggressive, resulting in the death of other sperms when one sperm goes in to impregnate the egg and so form the zygote. So those are some of the questions that will come up when we are discussing this question, whether men, because they are producing sperm all the time, whether they should be just impregnating women. Some studies have also shown that as men age, the strength of their sperm diminishes, and the offspring that are birthed from those unions, those offspring tend to have traits not as strong as children that were born out of sperms that the man produced when he was younger. Those are some of the arguments that we must look at when we are considering this whole question of viability and the role of men. Now, on the other hand, there is also the rest period following intercourse. So males usually need a rest period before re-engaging in sexual intercourse, but well-handled, a woman can go back and have intercourse over and over and over again if well-handled, within seconds, within minutes of orgasm, and women could have multiple orgasms going up to any number of orgasmic releases. There is also the debate that men do not have estrus, which means that women in their menstrual cycle, there is a period when they go into heat, and this is when they are ovulating. They are more likely to want sex. Their sex drive increases. So women have estrus based on their monthly cycle, and where they are in that cycle and heat or during the period of ovulation is when they are more likely to be aggressively needing sex and wanting sex. Whereas they said that men do not have estrus, they are constantly in heat, or men have lost their estrus. And there are other dynamics that we need to discuss if we're going to say that men have lost estrus or men do not have estrus. There are all the other external and environmental elements that causes a man to be aroused, that goes outside the natural environment that we must take into consideration. Now, humans, they say if males have lost estrus or do not have estrus, does it mean that humans are significantly different from many other species in both the animal and the plant kingdom, where there are clearly demarcated periods when the animal goes into heat or when it is most viable to plant a specific kind of plant? Are we saying that humans are much different from plants and animals? Also, there is the consideration that women do have cyclical estrus periods based on a lunar calendar system. Now, this system means that we all have a circadian rhythm, And there is profuse evidence that every cell inside of us is aligned with the electromagnetic field and the atmosphere, and the female's reproductive cycle is based on this circadian rhythm. So then are we saying that while on the one hand we see this alignment in women, that alignment is not happening in men? And if that is so, we need to understand whether this is a naturally occurring phenomenon or if it is a consequence of what is going on in the society, other kinds of unnatural. When I say unnatural, we might have ads, we might have foods, we might have all kinds of other things that is causing the man to be aroused more frequently, and in addition to the natural cycle, have it been masked? Those are some of the questions that we have to ask. Has it been masked, the estrus in men? Having said some of that, are we to contend that men do not have estrus related to their circadian rhythm, even though all other aspects of our existence is aligned to our circadian rhythm? Now, despite the argument of virility and viability in males, where they are able to engage in sexual intercourse and deliver sperms at all times and at any time, the most serious concern is the ability to attract wealth and acquire wealth for sustenance of self, wife or mate, and offspring that may be birthed from the union that results from a man's sexual intercourse experiences.